Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Jonathan Baktari, who's the CEO of E7 Health and U.S. Drug Test Centers. Jonathan, welcome to the program.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's an honor. Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome. And, I think we could have taken about 4.5 minutes and read through your bio. So, you've got quite the background, but give us a little bit of your story and your entrepreneurial journey to this point in your career.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. I actually began, becoming a doctor and practicing clinical medicine. And after that journey, I got involved in a lot of administrative things, a lot of committees and department heads in the clinical world. And that sort of evolved, and one door opened another, and then got into more administrative medicine, both on the health insurance side as well as on the hospital side, and even teaching in medical school. So got to do a lot of stuff outside of just straight clinical medicine. And, one door seemed to open up another, and, eventually got opportunities to do different administrative stuff. And then, of course, eventually we opened up, our own company, healthcare related company back in 2009. And then that company has grown and evolved into other sister companies. So it's just been a nice, slow evolution and journey.
When you were describing that, it made me think of something. So here's an interesting observation that I want your input on. A lot of people that would have a similar background, like, well, I started this and then I went over to this and that, they may say, well, I kind of feel bad because I'm kind of all over the place, and I started off doing this and now I'm ending up over here. But in reality, there's slight pivots, all based on your area of expertise, and one door opens the door to another door, and you kind of stair step and building block into each other. And you probably could not do what you're doing right now had it not been for the background and the first initial steps.
Oh, for sure. Because it is those experiences that help you be qualified to do like the next thing, right? Yeah. Nobody walks in and says, oh, I'm going to be in charge of this whole operation. It's, first being, a doctor, then being on committees, and then being heads of committees, and then, maybe then taking a part-time administrative position, growing from that, getting mentored, evolving. So clearly, all those experiences built on each other. No one's going to say, hey, here, become medical director of 7 hospitals.
Yeah.
Because you're a nice guy,
Yeah. And also there were probably times throughout each of those stages that you were noticing, maybe mentally noticing, or maybe even taking notes like, you know what? I really don't like this process. I really don't think this is effective. And then, when I get out on my own, or if I could have the chance to do it on my own. So you probably started, bringing your own nuances out of each situation. And then when you got into this startup and this next, stage, you're like, okay, these meetings are inefficient because here's the way we're going to do it.
Yeah. It's almost like you're reading my mind, especially because I got the experience as a clinical doctor. I got the experience, thank goodness, as teaching in medical schools. I got the experience in working for the hospitals as well as working for the insurance companies. So yeah, you're right. It was because if you only had one perspective, okay, I won't do that. But now how, at least with healthcare, you see what angle everyone's coming at. And so when you have to create something, you already know everyone's motivation, that their weak points, their strong points, the stuff that matters, the stuff that doesn't matter to different players in the industry. Yeah. And that allows you to carve out your little area, if that makes sense. And so it's exactly what you just said. You're probably one of the first few people that, kind of said that before I said it. So it was really the insight from every sector that, it's sort of like being a football coach. If you don't know how the defense is run and the offense and the special teams, you're probably not going to make the best decisions. If you were at one point a special teams coach, and at one point a defensive coach, an offensive coach, you're probably going to, be more likely to succeed as a head coach.
Yep. Hey, so if we had your medical school curriculum and syllabus for all of your classes in front of us, how many would be how to start your own business and how to succeed as an entrepreneur?
0.
Yeah. I knew that was the answer, but you've moved from medicine into admin, administrative, and hospitals, but then you've launched companies, entrepreneurial. So where did you pick up those skills?
Again, I'm going to say it's an evolution of those administrative skills, because I think without those administrative skills, just to the nuts and bolts of starting a company might not have been as strong. But then, I was really lucky to have a lot of great mentors. I always try to remind myself, no matter how far along I got, that I wasn't always the smartest guy in the room, and just shut up and listen a lot. Yep. And just realize, especially as you're evolving into things that you weren't trained for, there's a lot of shut up and listen that you got to tell yourself, and especially if you're on the right people. If you're around a great mentor, or the Michael Jordan or LeBron James of a certain thing, that's really when you don't really need to give your opinion. You just need to be quiet and listen.
I've heard it said, and I'm sure you have as well, like, if you're the smartest person in the room, go find another room.
Right.
And you're the sum of all the people that you hang around, and the books you read, and the audio trainings you listen to, and it also reminds me too what we were talking about a second ago. Do you have 20 years of experience, or do you have 1 year of experience 20 times over? Which is illustrating the fact that, I'm just punching the clock, I'm doing my deal, and I've got 20 years of experience, but you really don't. You've got 1 year of experience, but what you're describing is you've got all these years of experience because each year built upon the previous year, and you've tweaked and fine-tuned and improved, and then the next year is even better because of what you've learned.
Yeah, and if you view it like that, and you view it like, I need to acquire more skills, just like flying a plane or playing a violin, there are certain skills you need to acquire, and it's not going to come because you're a nice guy or people like you. It's going to come because you're going to learn those skills from people who have come before you and have succeeded. So I think it's understanding that you can't view it as some sort of soft skill that you're going to figure out because you're a nice guy and people like you. It really requires almost technical training on some weird level to acquire some of these skills to lead an organization, enroll people into your vision, motivate, direct, mentor. Those are skill sets that I think some people think are just intuitive, but they're not. You actually have to learn. Like when I'm mentoring some of my senior people, like one of the things I tell them, you could say the same thing to 5 people who report to you, the same thing to 5 people, and get 5 different reactions. So often you have to calibrate, for example, how you say something to Bill and differently from how you say it to Susie, because of the way they're going to digest it. So this idea that you're just blurt everything you want whenever you want, and people will just respond. It's a combination of all that, and mentoring and rolling into vision, leading by example. You got to do sort of all the above. I always say, like, if you wanted to land the 747 and there was 10 steps to do it, and you decide to skip 2 of those steps, just because you got 8 out of 10 doesn't mean the plane's going to land.
Yep. Everyone is important. And, you were describing too about how, you need to have this skill and that skill, but also I would suspect that one of the skills is to realize where you have a working knowledge of an area, but you're not the most proficient in it. And now I need to bring in someone that is going to really take it, have the expertise. I'm going to oversee it. So I need to understand what they're talking about, but hey, this is not my area. So as an example, some entrepreneurs go, well, I can't do numbers. I can't do, good, fine. Bring in a CFO, even if it's a, fractional CFO. So what are your thoughts around recognizing where your skill set is and then bringing people in to come alongside you?
Yeah. Well, think about it. As an organization gets bigger, even a small one, but as it gets bigger, there's no way you can be a subject matter expert on everything.
Yep.
You're not a subject matter expert on HR. You're not IT. You're not a subject matter expert on marketing, on social media. You can't be a subject matter expert. What you can do is surround yourself, identify people who are, and, once you identify the right people, don't micromanage them, collaborate with them, but don't micromanage them. Of course, you have to make sure that you feel like it's moving in the right direction. But once you find the right people, the whole, just get out of their way really is the way to do it. So I agree. Yeah.
100%. So what are some of those, we've talked about a lot of key ingredients for success, but what are some other key ingredients for success in launching something, a startup?
Oh, that's a really great question. I mean, the first key ingredient in launching a startup is your idea. I think so many people think like, oh, I have a great idea, but they don't really vet it out. In other words, it's different if you're going to start an insurance company in a town where there's 100 other insurance companies. And just because you're going to give great customer service, that doesn't mean you're going to be successful. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are just like, well, I'm good at this. I'm good at insurance, or I don't know why I'm picking on insurance. I'm just randomly saying something. But if you don't have a great smoking idea that really you're going to think of a certain angle to get into it. It kind of reminds me of one of my favorite books, Blue Ocean Strategy. This whole thing, like, do you want to get into a red ocean where you're competing, with 100 other insurance companies, or do you want to reinvent how insurance is done and kind of not have any, make your competitors irrelevant? So I think knowing what you're getting yourself into is probably the first thing of a startup. And then second thing after you've kind of gotten past that is execution. I bet you there's startups in Silicon Valley every day that fail, but not because it was a bad idea, but because they just couldn't get the talent together, or sometimes the money to execute. So people think, well, if I have a great idea, for sure I'll execute. Oh, and if you have a bad idea, you need both. You need a great idea, then you need to assemble a team that's going to execute. And by team, I mean a group of people who are all in, who believe in your vision, and you're going to take on the world. And failure is not an option. When you get that kind of team, it's going to really improve the chances of your startup, potentially succeeding. So it's all about, what are things I can do to improve the chances? No guarantees in life, but what can I do to improve the chances of the startup succeeding?
It reminds me of the old saying, knowledge is power, and people are like, yeah, knowledge is power. And that's partially true because it's potential power. You've got to implement it. And that kind of goes to your execution. And what my company's, the tagline is strategy, tactics, and execution, because you have to have that strategy. And then you got to implement or take the tactics and put them into place. And then you can have the best strategy in the world and the wonderful tactics. But if you do nothing with it and let it collect dust on your computer or your desk, and you never put it into action, that execution is key. And I've even heard it said that some business consultants say, I think I'm just going to start buying companies and make one change, put on their website a big button that says buy now. And he goes, and the point was, so many people do all of the talking, get people excited, and then they never ask for the business.
Right.
You don't need to negotiate. In many cases, you don't need to negotiate, as far as objections and back and forth and strong arm. Sometimes it's just, hey, you've mentioned that this is what you need. Here's our solution. I've mentioned how powerful it is. Let's move ahead. Does that sound good? What are your thoughts on kind of that, making that step to, avoiding negotiation, but still asking for the sale?
Well, the thing about asking for the sale, one of the things I talk about is, if you're in a position where they believe you are the subject matter expert on what it is you're asking for, that's what we try to do. So yes, it's good to ask for the sale, but then anyone can just ask for the sale. But if you can, as part of asking for that sale, through strategies that we talk about internally, convey that, we are the 900-pound gorilla in this. So when we ask for the sale, if you say no, or if you're thinking about saying no for whatever reason, that anything else is probably going to be a step down.
Mm-hmm.
And once someone feels like, like I always tell my staff, if LeBron James was going to give you advice on how to shoot a basketball, you would just shut up and listen and just say, you wouldn't like say, well, let me, or if he offered to give you coaching on basketball, you wouldn't say, that's good, LeBron. Let me talk around.
Yeah, but I think this is a better option.
Right,
Yeah.
Or I think this is better. Or let me get back to you.
Yeah.
Once people feel like they're talking to the LeBron James of whatever it is you're doing, and then maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you got to start to make that kind of separation that you are the subject matter. I think a lot of people just come off and ask for the sale, but I say, build some credibility.
Yeah.
That you are the LeBron James. So when you say this is how you shoot the ball, they don't say, well, let me check with 2 other people and get back to you. Or let me, it's more, I think more sales are done when you've, kind of set the stage, and then sometimes you don't even have to ask for the sale. They're going to like, oh, when can we start working together? But yeah, I think we teach my staff, just make sure before you get there that they get it, that you are the 900-pound gorilla in that industry.
We could probably spend a 3-day weekend seminar on that one point alone, because that's my passion, which is so many times people have this dichotomy between imposter syndrome of, I've got the expertise, but I don't know, maybe I question myself and I don't want to be too braggy. You've got that. And then you've also got the aspect of, you've got all these things you've done in accolades, but yet the world doesn't know about it, or you're not using them in your outreach process so that your prospects don't really realize it. So you have to consciously use that in your business development, but do it in a way that it does not come off as pushy, prideful, braggy, that kind of thing. Yeah.
No, you had that. As a matter of fact, I hate to give a shameless plug, but we had this internal course where because our company relies a lot on phone calls, and our company relies on phone calls. And so what we do is we actually teach internally a course on how to do that. In fact, my staff finally convinced me to just offer it to the public. So we put it on Kajabi, but it's this internal course we built for my staff on, how to give that aura that you're the Michael Jordan or LeBron James, and have other people pick up on that and then try to do business with them. So yes, you said it could take a whole seminar. So we actually did a seminar. And we put it on Kajabi, and I think it really applies to almost every field, because once people believe you're the real deal, everything else melts away often.
Have you ever heard of Stanley Milgram?
No, I don't think so. Maybe refresh my memory.
I use this in my talks. That makes the very point you're making, and you can Google this. It's a well-known study from back in the 50s. He was a social psychologist with Yale, and he did this study on the people's response to obedience to authority. And so basically the short version was, he does the study at Yale, brings people in and says, okay, you're going to sit here in the booth with me. And he's got the white lab coat and the clipboard. And you see that person behind the mirror there, or the window. They're strapped to this, electrode, and we're going to be asking them questions through the speaker. And when they get it right, the green light comes on. When they get it wrong, it gives them a electric shock. And every time they get an answer wrong, it gets harder and harder and worse shock. So what happened was, they predicted that, man, hardly anyone's going to get past 2 or 3 no's because they don't want to hurt this person. But the person they started giving, well, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that. The person in the lab coat goes, you must continue. This must be done. And so the gist was, we respond to people in a position of authority. So when we can display our expertise in a kind way, being an educator, being an advocate, showing people that we should be trusted because of this and this and this, and we can get into, we're not going to get into the detail of what that could be, but many times you've given a keynote, or many times you've been interviewed on, or many times there's those things that you have to just lead people through the process to recognize, ooh, that's a interesting point I've never thought of. I'm glad you mentioned it that way. And wow, they're legit. I want to learn more. And so it's
Right.
that you have to be proactive that way and not feel like I'm a pushy salesperson, but people gravitate toward people in a
Mhm.
position of authority.
Yeah, and often, part of showing that is not actually talking about the sale. For example,
Yeah.
we talk about getting to know your client. When you walk, if and I give this analogy to my staff, if you walked into the doctor's office that I have some stomach pain, and then he just writes you a prescription and orders an X-ray, versus you walk into a doctor and says, I have stomach pain, and he spends 30 minutes. Where's the pain? Does the pain come? Does it go? How long have you had it? Ask you a million questions. You're much more likely to take that prescription than if he
Yes.
just writes it to you within the first 2 minutes. So I think the question of getting to know your client, which is a big part of like our course and what we teach, is the more you get to know your client, the less of a sales process it's going to be to begin with, because you're just sitting there trying to understand them, understanding where their, points of friction are, understanding where their issues are. And the more you understand them, the more they will feel that, oh, this is really a subject matter expert, because only a doctor would ask me, how long have you had the pain? What makes the pain better or worse? Is it better when you stand, when you sit? When a doctor asks those kind of questions, I mean, we do it because we need to know, but when a doctor asks all those questions, it conveys to the patient, oh, wow, this is like an expert, because who else would ask all these detailed questions and give
100%.
feedback? So I think that process that you put people through that conveys that you really want to understand them and understand their issues. And sometimes you say, by the way, I think you should maybe go somewhere, let me refer you to someone, or let me send you this way or that way. And if you just do that, I mean, eventually everything works out.
You mentioned friction points, and I want to make this point and get your thoughts on this concept. If you know your true target audience, the type of psychographics and demographics, and you start researching and listening for their specific friction points, there's going to be some commonalities, 5 to 7 to 8, whatever, main friction points that once you can identify those and then you start creating educational content around that, then it becomes no friction point for the next person you talk to.
Oh,
So that's a
yeah.
huge observation that sometimes people don't pick up on.
No, as a matter again, are you sure you didn't take my course? Because
No.
because one of the things we do in the script that we have is we summarize that, in our intro. So while we're talking to someone and saying, well, this is what we do and this is why we do it, because we have found blah, 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 not knowing that that's their friction point, but just, and to address this, we've done this. And so, yes, that's exactly right. And even if like sometimes where they're probably, if let's say they're shopping your competitor and majority of people are shopping your competitor, so just come out with it in your introduction. Say, hey, most people look at our competitor and they're great people. We love them. They're nice. But just to let you know, these are a couple of things that distinguish us. They're, we're open in the weekends. They're not. We sell the product and service it. They only sell it. I mean, if you even when they're going to go to your competition, as long as you do it honestly and healthy way. And sometimes you have to give them props. Yeah, well, they have that service, we don't. But as long as you're straight and honest, and you're actually looking out for them, we have found that actually is the best business.
It's like the old Maya Angelou quote, which goes something like, people will often forget what you say, but they'll never forget how you make them feel. And so when you are asking those questions and you're responding and you're actually paying attention to them and you're not just giving rote answers, people feel like you care about them and there's that empathy. And so that ties into, you're not just some machine going, yes, we feel like this is so I think that goes along with that whole concept of, elevating yourself above the competition without even mentioning names or bad mouthing them, because let's face the fact that many times, whatever industry or profession, they're talking to 2 or 3 people before making the choice. So what can you do that sets you apart from, yes, expertise, but even how you articulate your messaging? And that's a huge piece.
Oh yeah, it is beyond comprehension. I mean, the difference in the ability to get deals done, sign up clients, what have you, with no training versus really being trained in it, your numbers can go from 30 to 80%. I think when people feel like they're in front of the right person and they do need the product, they almost never say no, regardless of price. If people are willing to pay a premium to be in the hands of the right person.
Yes.
And so, when people say, oh, that company couldn't really afford it. And I don't really think so. I just think there was no value.
Yep.
Because when the value is built, because you know what, they may be able to get this service, for 20% less, but they're not going to get us.
Yes.
So, do you want to save 20% or do you want to get the team that you really want? And this is, once you get this concept, you can't go back, because just take care of the person, do them right, think about them first, think about us second, and the business will come.
And what a wonderful way to end the conversation, because that just sums it all up, Jonathan. Thank you so much for coming on. What's the best way that people can reach out and connect with you?
Sure. They can go to Baktari MD, which has all our content, our podcasts, all my interviews, blogs, and everything else. If they're interested in that course, it's called the High Converting Call Class on Kajabi. Also, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or we're on all the social media handles too, under Baktari MD.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
Great. Thank you so much. It was fun. Thank you.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.